we live? Yep. It's not showing up on the... Oh, there we go. Hello, everyone. So we are live for this month's TeachableU Workshop with Kay Putnam. Please type in the chat if you can hear me, if you can see me. I'm quite bright today. We have the ring lights on. I see the chat is very lively right now. We have everyone coming from all over the world. So definitely type in your name, where you're from. If you can't hear me, type that in too, because I can see the chat, I can see you. Let me know. But I will get started. So today we have for you Kay Putnam. She is a psychology-driven brand strategist for entrepreneurs. Through works with hundreds of clients from international corporations to solo entrepreneurs, she's developed her signature Clarity Code method. She believes that businesses should be more human and that all entrepreneurs have an inner genius that they can use to impact the world. So she's going to be presenting Brand Your Brilliance, how to create a stellar brand so your course stands out and sells. Welcome, Kay.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. When Teachable asked me to create a workshop for this community, I said, heck yes. And I made one especially for course creators, for the people who are building online courses and selling them as their main business. I didn't want to repurpose anything or make it generic. I really wanted to provide as much value to you here in our training together. So I'm so excited to be here. And with that, I think we can pull up the slide. Good. All right, guys. So no matter where you are in your course creation, launching and then selling said course, oftentimes in a course creator's journey becomes a moment, or you come across a moment where the inner demons, the little mind monkeys come to play, and they're like, who am I to create this course? Like, there are so many ways that people could get this information. They could, go onto YouTube, or they could go onto XYZ's online course. And who am I? Like, how can I stand out? How can I provide unique value to the market in a way that feels really authentic and good to me? And that is exactly what we are going to talk about here in this presentation, in this workshop. I'm going to actually give you action steps along the way. So this isn't just me presenting to you. So, put the phone down, take out some notes, get ready to get into action and to learn at the same time. I am not going to be monitoring the chat as I'm teaching. I'll jump over there in the last 15 minutes or so. So do post your questions there for sure, and then we'll get to them at the end. So let's do this. Let me know if you can hear me. I hope you can, because we're just gonna go for it.
Yeah, you're good.
Perfect. All right, let me just get my course slides moving. Okay, so here's the three things that we're going to cover in this training. How to stand out, even if your course is one of thousands or millions. Where to actually incorporate your brand into the Teachable platform. Like I said, I built this specific to you. I am a huge advocate for Teachable. I sell all of my courses on the platform, so I'm excited to share that. And then we're going to wrap up with a more advanced action with the 5 C's of psychological selling, so that you can attract an audience who is super excited to be in your orbit, so you can sell courses both now and then future courses that you create, because all of the clients that I work with, and myself included, are in this for the long run. We're not trying to do this and get rich quick, right? We want to actually build a community and have an impact over time. And by focusing on your brand, this high leverage activity, you're going to be able to do this over time. And it doesn't just impact your success now. It's kind of this snowball effect that gets better and better and better over time. And then lastly, I like to say that I help entrepreneurs change the world with what they know. And I sincerely believe that by you sharing your genius with the world, you get to see that ripple effect that goes out. Your friends see that you're doing something weird and crazy and making a living at it, and your family sees it. And if you have children or other relatives, everybody sees what is actually possible. And then beyond that, your students get to see the results from the course, and then all of their friends, family, network get to see that as well. So it's this infinite ripple effect that ultimately changes the world. All right. And the coolest thing about focusing on your brand while you're creating your course is that it touches like every single piece of your course building process, from the ideation phase to actually creating the course to launching and selling it. So no matter where you are in your course journey, you can always upgrade this, make this better, and make it more effective. And like I said, it's high leverage, right? Like you do this once and it informs everything else. So you might be wondering, who is this nerd behind the camera? I made the mistake of going to CrossFit right before my videos. My face is still all beet red, but like I said, I'm here to show up and to serve, and I hope that I can do that. I have been working in business and branding for over 15 years. I actually started my first business when I was the ripe old age of 16. I've worked with hundreds of brands over the last decade and a half. You may, if you've ever come into contact with me online before, chances are it was through my brand personality quiz, which has been taken now over 100,000 times, which still boggles my mind. And the cool thing about working on brands, it's not platform specific and it's not niche specific either. So whether you're selling a course on real estate or calligraphy or how to build a business or anything in between, this work applies to your brand. And we'll get to why in just a second. But these are just a few examples of the types of clients that I've helped upgrade their brand. So people like online coaches, product businesses, consultants, lots of course businesses, and everything in between. So people like Scott Oldford, who was a one-on-one client, and he has sold actually millions of dollars in courses after upgrading his brand. And of course, he's doing other things too, but the brand is at the foundation of this massive audience that he's built, and he's able to impact so many more people because they're interested in what he's doing. Okay. So you might be asking yourself, yeah, Kate, but does my course really need a brand, right? Like, isn't branding for people like Coca-Cola and Harley Davidson and Nike? Like, I have maybe a zero budget or next to zero budget. Like, is this really for me? Is this information going to be applicable to me? And to answer that question, I want you to think about walking into a location and looking at a white t-shirt that you're going to purchase. Now, the actual content of the white t-shirt might be extremely similar. Actually, we know it's going to be pretty similar. There's like maybe some slight variations in thread counts or like the cut of the particular white t-shirt that you're looking at. But all in all, if you're looking at buying a white t-shirt, it's a white t-shirt, right? But the context of that white t-shirt, it makes all of the difference. So it makes a massive difference if you're walking into, I don't know, Gucci or some other high-end boutique luxury store. Your perception of both the value of that t-shirt, what that t-shirt says about you, and what you would expect to pay for that t-shirt is dramatically different than if you were to walk into your local thrift store, right? So same content, radically different context. And the reason this happens, we know why this happens, right? Like, it's all the context clues. It's all of the stuff that's built around the product that we're selling. And anytime that you want to sell a product or service for that matter, but a product or service or information at a price that's higher than the market mean or the market average, you need a brand. You need a brand to help prop that price up to create more value in the product that you're selling. It doesn't matter how good the content of your course is. If it's not positioned the correct way in the marketplace, it can be really hard to justify the price that you're selling. Because like I touched on earlier, information, the market for information is actually really close to zero in terms of perceived value, right? Like, we expect our information for the most part to be free in many cases, especially as the internet is evolving as it is. So like, we log on to YouTube, we can watch all of these videos. We can, you're watching this training actually for free as part of the Teachable platform. You can listen to podcasts and get lots of value that way. Even buying a book, which seems to me like the best value, one of the best values in the entire world, because it's like literally information creators like entire brain into this little capsule. Only costs us $10 or $20, right? So if we want to charge prices that are premium compared to zero or next to zero, like I do with all of my courses, and I'm sure many of you do as well, then we have to have this additional context that we're building into your brand. And I don't want you to confuse my message here. Like, I know that your genius is invaluable. I know the impact that you have on your students and the people that are going through your courses. And I don't say this to discourage you. I hope that it's not too much of a Debbie Downer type of statement here. I'm just trying to make the case to illuminate why having a brand is so gosh darn powerful, right? We want to make sure that we're projecting to the world the value that is inside your courses before somebody even buys it. So before somebody even experiences it, or maybe experiences it in its full and like gets the full results from it, we have to communicate that value to the market. All right. And just like, I know that all brand people say this, but I just have to like put it out there and like do the disclaimer. Just because I have my course logos up on the screen here, don't confuse your brand with just a course logo. It's really the full experience. It's a full perception that your ideal client, that the market has about your product. So it's all of the associations that they're making. The logo might inform like a teeny tiny little bit of that perception that somebody has about you. So I think that it's useful, but what's really, really powerful is the entire story that you're building behind your product. And again, the baseline here is that you have a great course. I'm assuming that you already have fantastic, valuable information that you're sharing with people. This is about packaging it up and raising that perceived value before somebody even gets to experience that. So are you ready? Type in the chat. I hope you're having as much fun as I am. Type in the chat if you're ready to unlock your innate brand advantage, which means for my clients and students that I work with, like no more second guessing yourself. You have so much more clarity. You get more content published. So if you're working on all of those launch materials, you have a better focus on what you're actually creating. You attract a larger audience, which converts to more sales, less relationship building time because you're actually putting a lot of the information out there about your brand before somebody has to, like come into contact with you like on a one-on-one level. Hopefully never. I mean, in some cases, I love working with my clients, don't get me wrong, but like when we're scaling up, especially in a course-based business, a lot of times we're driven by freedom, right? Like we want to be able to go on vacation, want to be able to go to CrossFit in the middle of the day and not be tied to our desks all the time. So your brand helps with this process. And like we touched on before, higher prices, which means more profit, which means more abundance and more freedom. And then when you really focus on having an incredible brand, it becomes something that leads the industry. It becomes something that people look up to. And as a result, you get maybe more like JV opportunities or media opportunities. You get to make a bigger impact because you're operating at a very high level. All of these are great things, right? Type yes if you want some of these things in your course business. Okay. Now we're getting into the meaty stuff. So the first section of this training is how to stand out in a sea of competitors. And I approach this differently than a lot of people. So the common advice out there is like to really dive into your customer avatar and to survey the market and to see how you're different. I like to flip this inside out and upside down because I found that those techniques left me more overwhelmed and with more imposter syndrome than before I started. So instead of feeling like I found this like hole in the market, I felt like, oh my gosh, who am I to be doing this? Like, who am I to publish this course? Like, oh, like there's people that have worked for Google and, all sorts of things. Like, oh gosh, like you can really get in your mind in a bad way by doing some of those things, like having only an outward focus. So I, like I said, do this differently by tapping into your inherent magic. to attract your ideal clients. So instead of focusing outwards, we're turning our focus inwards to ask ourselves, who are we at our best? Where do our strengths really shine in a way that it outshines everybody? Like it becomes this bright beacon of light because you're standing in your strength, in your truth, and people are drawn to that. Like you become the brightest lighthouse, right? Like all of the, well, okay, bad analogy because boats avoid lighthouses, but you get my point, right? You get my point. So instead of stalking Facebook groups or meticulously writing that wish list of who your ideal client is, we're focusing in on our strengths because we're operating under the assumption that if we're creating good results for our clients, there's a market out there that wants those results. With me so far? Okay. So what we need to do, what the crux of this challenge is we have to figure out what our strongest values, beliefs, motivations, and even weaknesses are of our brand, whether that's your personal brand as a course creator, or if you're separating your personal self from your brand. This works in all cases. Like I said, I don't know if I said this, but like Coca-Cola and Apple and Harley-Davidson and REI, these companies are following the same process, and you can apply it to your brand as well. So once I realized that I needed to focus inward instead of outward, I started asking myself how to do that. And all of the advice that was out there was centered around be yourself. Just be yourself. Be authentic. I'm saying with a cheeky grin. And everything works itself out. But the problem with that, for me at least, I don't know if everybody has this identity crisis problem, but I have so many different facets of my personality. I can be goofy and silly and the life of a party at one moment, and then another situation in my life, like I'm hanging out in Thailand with these amazing elephant creatures that feels like really spiritual and kind of explorish. And then in Italy, we are very grateful to be able to go skydiving, which is amazing and kind of like thrill seeker maverick. And then, I mean, occasionally, like I dress up kind of like boho and feminine and those things. So like there's all of these different facets of my personality. And for me to show up as a course creator, as a personal brand, I needed some focus, right? Like I couldn't be all of these things to, in my business. I needed to have some filter that I could use. And when I was looking at, different course creators and different entrepreneurs in the market, I could see that they had focus. Like this isn't about not being authentic. It's just about putting a filter on your authenticity so you create some clarity both for yourself and the market. And I could see that other entrepreneurs had it. I just didn't know how to get it until I discovered something very magical: brand archetypes. Now, you may have heard of brand archetypes in the past, but I'm actually going to go into some detail in this training about how to apply your brand archetype to your course in Teachable, which is really exciting. And if you haven't heard about brand archetypes in the past, no worries. I'll give you the overview here so you can see it, so you can have that light bulb moment that I had. So I was on this like internet rabbit hole of links one day. This was about 6 or 7 years ago now. And I stumbled on this like GeoCities style, like Angel Fire. I don't know if there's any like original geeks here in the room, but like the very first website builders were these like ancient things were built websites that looked like they were in the 90s. Nothing like the beauty of the Teachable platform. And all it did was list the 12 archetypes. And it wasn't even related to brands. It was just these 12 archetypes. And immediately as I read through the list, I could see, I'm like, oh, this entrepreneur that I follow is this archetype. This entrepreneur that I follow is this archetype. This one is kind of a blend of these two. And they only stay in their lane. Like they're not trying to be everything to every person. They are choosing what they are at their best, at their strongest, at their most natural, and they're really leaning into that identity. Now, this is similar to, say, like a personality test, but it's deeper, and it is almost more related to building a character, because it's more related to not only the personality, but the internal drivers, like the motivations, the values. And then each of them have themes and metaphors that work really well in that archetype. Let me introduce you to the 12, and maybe you'll start to see yourself in one or two of them, like I did. Actually, that's a lie. I didn't see myself. So I had the experience. I was like, oh, these are really great, and I can tell what other people are, but I can't see myself. I don't know exactly where I stand in these 12 archetypes. So I started digging around and looking for some type of assessment. And there was like a few, again, this was like 6 or 7 years ago, right? So there's like a few kind of okay ones that were like PDF driven and weren't great. So I set out that moment to create one for myself, by myself, for myself, because I needed that tool. Like I needed something that was going to be a little bit more objective about like, who's Kay when she's being really awesome? Because I can't see it. It's like trying to read the label of a bottle when you're stuck inside of it, right? Like as humans, we're perpetually terrible at being a good objective assessment of ourselves. So I created the quiz that I mentioned in the beginning that's now been taken over 100,000 times to help people decide. It's completely free. All of the resources, so there's a bunch of free resources after the quiz, like a whole info page. I have a Pinterest board for each of them. If you include your email address, you get like a quick little 5-page PDF about each of them. So tons and tons of free resources. So if your interest gets piqued by this workshop and you're curious about what yours is, definitely stop over to my site and you can take that quiz. So here they are, the 12 archetypes. And when I first built this presentation, this piece I grabbed from another presentation. I didn't put them in alphabetical order, which kind of drives me a little bit crazy now. Magician, girl or guy next door, maverick, sage, explorer, entertainer, royal, lover, caregiver, hero, innocent, and creator. So all of these archetypes, so these are things that show up over time. If you watch like a TV show or a movie, you'll see these different archetypes show up in the characters. If you read a book, you'll see these archetypes show up in the different characters. And let's just skip ahead to the next slide because I'll give you some examples of some really big brands that embody these archetypes. So everybody from Apple to Lego to Nike identify very strongly with some of these archetypes. And what I recommend for people that are building a brand, whether that's in general or around your course, is that you choose two. You choose a primary and a secondary so that you can create your own unique blend of brand identity. And this can help inform so many of your brand decisions, from your color palettes to the fonts, to the stories that you tell, to your slide design, all of these things. You can be inspired by something that's in alignment with who you are, with your truth. Because one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make when they're building their brand is that they're inspired by entrepreneurs or courses or big brands have nothing to do with who they actually are at their best. And you kind of get more of that imposter syndrome then. To give an example, like when I first started in online business, I was trying to emulate what was successful, right? Like, so I saw this entrepreneur who had this New York City jet set life. So for a short time, I renamed my signature service to Finding Your It Factor. And then on a very early version of my website, I saw that other people were using this like very conversational, flowery language. So I opened up my copy with, "Hey, bombshell." I'm like cringing now as I say it because it's like so not me, but I couldn't see it because I was just getting in my own way. And then one final cringeworthy example, I saw that people were doing really well with like this go get 'em, like motivating content. So I started a video series that was called Your Monday Morning Kick in the Pants. I think you can still see some of the early videos from that series on YouTube to this day. And I'm entirely embarrassed by them. But this was all pre-archetypes, right? It was before I knew exactly who I was and really identified with my top two. So my top two are Sage, my teacher at heart, I love to learn, and I'm a total nerd. And then my secondary is magician. So it's all about recognizing, finding your inner power so that you can transform your world. And now that you know that about me, you can kind of see how some of the language that I even use in this workshop is informed by that. So I told you that I believe that or my goal, my mission is to help entrepreneurs change the world with what they know. So it's magician and sage together. So step one is identifying which you identify with, right? And then the second step is going to apply some of these ideas to your course. And I'm going to talk about in the next section, like where in Teachable to actually do this. But let me give you a quick example. I know that the archetype slides have a lot of content on them because there's 12 of them. And I do not ever recommend, if anybody ever creates a quiz, that you create 12 outcomes, because I actually have a separate course on Teachable, of course, for each of the 12 archetypes. I cannot tell you how much time that took to create 12 different courses for each of these incredible points of reference. But yeah, just a fun fact that's semi-related to point to the fact that there's maybe a teeny bit of information overall on these slides. But I wanted, like I said, I wanted to make sure I'm teaching as much as possible, like giving you actually tangible things to grab onto. I hope that is working well for you. Okay, so when we think about applying our archetype to our course, excuse me, my nose is itchy. Let's think about a hypothetical course that we're developing. And the content is all about how to build a business. I'm sure there's many of these courses out there, right? Tons of competition. But you can see in these hypothetical names of the courses that you start to create positioning and you start to create contrast from other products that are selling the exact same thing and potentially the exact same content with just this one single decision, just the name. I think my favorite is the Explorer. That one could be called the Escape Hatch, right? Like, let's escape out of corporate America and travel the world and have a location independent business selling courses, right? Or the Entertainer, the non-boring business. So you're creating a difference in the perception of your product and actually the actual experience that you're offering to your students by infusing personality and emotion and humanness into your brand of your course. And this might even go into the words that you're using to describe your course. So a hero course, if you're the hero archetype, might be goal-oriented and fast-paced, and it holds you accountable, and it's the absolute best information that you can get anywhere because it's competitive, right? As a contrast, if you are a strong caregiver brand, you might really be focused on creating a very supportive and kind and accepting community around the information that you provide. So this comes down to the very most strategic decisions that you can make when it comes to creating your course. Like, how can we create an experience that's differentiated through the filter of our brand so that our course literally like oozes difference from different options in the market? Now, again, this applies to the colors that you choose, the stories that you're telling in your videos, the like video set that you set up behind you, the colors that you wear, the words that you choose to speak. All of these things can be influenced when you're being more intentional about your brand to make them less generic or to make them less alike from all of the other options that are in the market. Because we always have to remember that anytime something is expected, our minds are actively tuning that out. So our brain is working overtime all of the time. So anytime that it comes across something that it thinks it knows what it's all about and it thinks like it knows what's coming next, it just zones out. Like, it doesn't want to pay attention. It's not a new stimulus, right? So for our course to stand out, we have to make it feel fresh, to feel different and novel to our ideal students. All right, so your action steps. Take the brand quiz and then do an audit of your course, or just a brainstorm if you don't actually have the course created yet. How can you instill these ideas, these like deep-rooted human value and personality traits into your brand in different ways so that you can stand out? All right, section 2, let's bring all of that work that you do and all of that inspiration and insight that we found in section 1 to Teachable. And our mantra for this section is E squared. Sage coming out in me. And what that means is we always want to be looking for opportunities where we can elevate the experience. So instead of just the out-of-box setup of Teachable, as beautiful as it was one of the primary reasons why I chose Teachable. We don't want to look like every other Teachable course out there. We want to provide a different experience. We want to create that novelty and that surprise and delight for our course clients, right? Our course students. So every opportunity that you have to make something custom and to make it more you and to make it ooze personality and to be more exciting for your students, again, through the filter of your brand, we want to do that. Now, this is a little disclaimer. I just had to make it because I fall into this category in some respects, but there are all sorts of really advanced things that you can do with like custom coding or like the way that you interact your website with the Teachable platform. I even saw one course creator who was using Teachable is essentially her whole website with a monstrous amount of custom coding to make that work. Lots of other people, myself included, use their own website for like the sales page design, and then they link to Teachable for the actual like course experience. So just understand that there are a ton of different options. In this presentation, I'm going to focus on the out-of-box functionality of Teachable just so it's applicable to as many people as possible. So first, and maybe most obvious, is make sure that you are updating your logo and the favicon, which is a fun little icon that sits up in, I don't know if you can see it. No, you can't see it. Up in the little corner next to the tab. So like when you have 29 different tabs open and sometimes you can only see the little picture, having a little custom icon there is sometimes very effective. And then the homepage background. I'm not going to go into like super detail on these, but just know that you should update them. And even if you don't have a professional designer in your back pocket and somebody, you're like maybe a massive budget to get these things done, just simple is better. Just do something simple that feels good for your brand. I'm going to give you actually a little bit of tips here in a second on how to do that. And then the second option is the font choice, right? And there's not actually a ton of options for Teachable. I think they did this on purpose so that nobody creates a really ugly Teachable site. Because sometimes when we're left to our own devices and we're doing our own design, sometimes with love, we can make choices that aren't best for like readability or accessibility for our students and our users. So they kind of tighten it down to this group of very popular, widely used fonts. And I have a resource that I created for you. I'll drop it in the chat once I'm done with the actual training here, but let me just preview it real quick for you. So I created just a quick little cheat sheet of each of the different fonts. Hopefully you can see my screen. And the slight variations in personality between them. So you can kind of match up the one that you think best fits your brand personality using this little key. But ultimately, these fonts are all really good choices. You're not going to go wrong with like any of them. They're all really great fonts that are used all over the entire interwebs. So don't beat yourself, or like don't dwell on this decision too much. I can help you make the decision with decisiveness and speed with the resource that I provide for you. The only thing that you kind of need to know in terms of branding, visual branding, and the fonts is choosing between a serif and a sans serif. So sans serifs, which is most of the Teachable options, are more modern. They feel more casual. They're a little bit more human feeling, like or like talking to a friend, if you will. And then there are 2 serif font options in the Teachable platform. These tend to feel more traditional. It's the type of text that you would see in a book, right? So it feels more perhaps wise or practiced, steadfast, traditional. So that should help you make a decision there. And then the next piece, which I'm really excited to share a really cool tool with you, is how to choose your brand colors. Again, so we want all of this to be informed by the archetypes that we're choosing. So we have this primary and we have a secondary archetype, and then we're just kind of like blending them together in the way that feels good for us, and then trying to make design decisions. Think of design as like a new language that you're learning. We want to make design decisions that communicate that truth. So let me give you an example. So the first step in this process, so you have your archetype hat on, you have that filter on, and you may have heard this advice before, but I promise you if you do it again with the archetype in mind, it's going to be a completely different result. So I recommend that you curate a mood board. I love Pinterest. I'm a prolific pinner. I love the platform. And the key here is that your brand is built on truth, not trends. So you don't want your design to be just an emulation of somebody else. It needs to intentionally communicate your message. All of us female entrepreneurs don't need a website that has soft nude colors, some metallics, and a script, right? Like, we're varied human beings. Like, we can all have dramatically different visual expressions of our brand. So I'm going to give you 2 examples, and I'm going to give you a tool to actually choose your colors out of the mood board that you create. So here is the mood board that I created for a client of mine. He happens to be an e-commerce watch brand, but you could totally use this mood for a course as well if you had like that rugged, outdoorsy type of vibe. I happen to be a humongous Game of Thrones fan, so I was totally channeling like Jon Snow when I created this mood board. So you create the mood board, and then you can use a tool that I highly recommend called Coolers. I'll show you how to use it in just a second, to come up with the mood board and actually figure out what those 6-digit hex codes are that you can put in to Teachable. But before I show you how to do it, let me just quickly address what you're looking for. So a good brand color palette is going to have a few different things. It's going to have a main signature color. So this is the thing that's like showing up in most of your graphics. It's like the Tiffany blue box, right? When you see that Tiffany blue, you think of the brand if you have experience with it. So you want to have one signature color. You want to have one call to action color. So usually that's a color that is highly contrasted with your signature color. And then the 2 other things that you're going to want to have for sure is going to be a dark, like a nearly black color, and then a light, nearly white color. These are for things like text or just neutral backgrounds that you're using. And then if you want to get a little spicy, a little flavorful, you can add one more accent color. So this color palette that you see on your screen is set up exactly that way. So we have the signature brand color would be like that foresty green, that burnt orange, yellow flame color would be the call to action. So those would be like the links and the buttons in this case. We have the nearly black and the nearly white, which will make up our text colors, whether it's on a light background or a dark background. And then if we want to get a little crazy, we can throw in this like blue jean blue to just have some fun, right? This is supposed to be fun, guys. This is not rocket science. Okay. So let me show you how I created this. So Coolers is COOLORS.co. When you go to the home page, it has a flashy animation. So I didn't know if I wanted to have it up here on the screen right when we came up, but you want to click on Generate. Hopefully the screen is still following me here for this little demonstration. I'll jump back to the slides in just a second. And then it'll generate just a random color palette for you here. We want to actually click the little camera up here and pick colors from an image. And you can choose, after you've made your mood board, you could take a screenshot of it, and then you can upload that mood board into Coolers. It is the coolest thing. And you can see down here, it automatically generates a color palette from this inspiration. And you can keep on clicking auto if you don't like the first one, and you can get one that's even better. Once you get one that you like, you can start to play with it over here. So like I said, we wanted one color that was super contrasty for the buttons, and we don't really have that here. It's like all kind of melding together. So if you click on the adjust, you can like turn up the brightness and maybe the saturation to get a really bright color. And then we also don't really have a nearly white and a nearly dark. So we would probably want to pick two of our colors. This one to make more bright, to make it more of a white. And I'd probably tone down the saturation a little bit. So it's kind of a creamy white. And then this one over here, we would probably want to make darker so that it's nearly black for like a text color. You can decide how far you want to go. Just make sure that you have good contrast so it's readable. So I hope that was super fun for you. And just to give you another example, here's a totally different brand. So this was an innocent and entertainer brand, and this is the color palette that came out of that one. So just to show you how dramatically different this can be. So your action steps here are to create that Pinterest mood board with your archetype in mind, take a screenshot of it, and then use that to create your brand color palette if you don't have one created already. And then just remember, you have other options in Teachable to demonstrate your brand. So you can see my main brand color up along the top headline there. And then I also have on brand thumbnails for each of my courses. And especially because there's not a ton of like font choices in Teachable, the thumbnails are a great opportunity to use some of your brand fonts. And if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't want to like create that fancy thumbnail that has text on it, notice my top or my bottom two courses there, they just have an on-brand photo, right? So it's being informed by that sage and magician that I am, and I got photos taken of myself and I just use those. In a pinch, you could also use stock images, right? If you're in the beginning stages and you don't have photos yet. And I wanted to remind you also, don't forget the inside of your course. So your slide design, if you're using slides to teach, and then also your worksheets should feel like a cohesive experience through the entire student journey, from launch to completing the course and becoming a raving fan of yours. And then your bio needs to have on-brand language, on-brand photo, right? All right, guys, I appreciate you guys so much. And we have one more section to get through. And this applies most directly to when you're creating the sales pages for your course. I think I mentioned, if not, I call myself the psychology-driven brand strategist because the archetypes lean into psychology. And I'm just obsessed with how humans make decisions. And instead of trying to like go section by section by section on a sales page, they're all so different. Let's just create a checklist of 5 C's that your sales page, and frankly, the content that you're creating around your course, needs to hit on. And then in this resource doc that I created for you, below is just a checklist of all the places in Teachable where you should be updating. And then in the last page, I have the checklist so you can go through and audit your own sales page or use it to help write your sales page and create it, of all of the different elements that you're going to want to have underneath the 5 C's. So I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. So hopefully I don't go too quickly through these, but I want to make sure that we have time to jam and hang out after. So let's do this. Okay, so clarity. Clarity is probably the most important. It is so important that your brand is clear, that your product is clear, that your marketing is clear. And what I mean by that is you need to know without a doubt exactly what problem you are solving for what person. And you need to communicate this to them. They have to know that you see them and that you are a trusted advisor to help them get to the other side of this chasm that they're in front of. It's also really helpful to know what the pain points are that they're dealing with right now, like the symptoms of the problem. So even if I know that somebody needs to work on their brand, they might not come to me and say, oh, my brand is just not great. Their symptoms might be that they're not selling as many courses as they would like, or they're not getting as many client inquiries as they would like, or they just feel weird in their business. Like they feel ashamed to share their website or their sales page. So those are the symptoms of the larger problem. And then also know what's motivating them. Like, what do they want? What are they dreaming about? What are they manifesting in their life? So talk clearly about the outcome that you're promising them. Second is credibility, also super duper duper important. Ways to do this are to include testimonials, especially from people who have been through the course and have gotten results from it. And then you could also think about other left brain things, like if you've been featured in press, or if you have any statistics about the topic of your course, or maybe a celebrity has said something really profound about whatever you're teaching about. Like, I don't know, I can't remember her name right now, but it's like some health conscious foodie celebrity says that she has a green juice every morning, and your course is all about green juices. So you could incorporate that credibility onto your sales page. You could also talk about the number of students you have or other fact-based achievements that you've made with your course. Now, contrast, we already started to dive into with discovering what your primary and secondary archetype are. And there's a few other ways that you can create contrast. So one of them is to create a unique framework. So even if you're teaching somebody how to get leads, or how to lose weight, or how to find their soulmate, or how to get better at their hobby, if you have a unique process to get them there and you name that process, it elevates the entire perceived value. You're like, oh, I can't get the clarity code process if I go with a different brand strategist. So I have to go with Kay because she has this process that I'm interested in, and it's her signature thing. And then you can also point out differences between you and other substitute options. So as a course creator, the person who's buying your course has the option maybe of going to like a community college or a university, or taking classes in their community. So like point out the advantages that you offer as an online course creator versus other options. Number 4 is certainty. This is maybe one of the hardest things to embody, but you need to know without a doubt the value that you are bringing to your students. So you need to communicate the return on investment that you're offering for their course investment. You have to paint the picture of what's possible. And then other ways you can do this is to preview what is going to happen on the other side. So once they enroll in your course, what experiences are they going to get? Like, are there calls? Is there a beautiful workbook? Are there videos? How long are the videos? Those types of things give people just a blanket around their mind so that they don't have to feel uncertain. And uncertainty leads to no sales, which we don't want. So we want to just give people that secure feeling of certainty. And then also offer a guarantee, right? Remove the risk from making the decision. And then our last C is commitment. And this one's easy. Just continue to ask for the sale. Invite them to enroll multiple times throughout the sales page, throughout your content. Just because you put it out there once doesn't mean that somebody's going to jump on it right away. Oftentimes we need to hear about an offer multiple times before we're ready to actually commit. So continually be seeking that commitment. So the action step is use that checklist in the resource doc that I gave you and audit your current sales page, audit your content calendar, and make sure that you're talking about all of those things that are going to move people from, audience member to paying student, which is awesome. And then just remember that your brand is the X factor. It is the delta, the differential between where you are now and where you could go with your course business. It is the thing that touches all other things. It is the big domino that when you knock it over, everything else starts to work better. So it pays to be intentional about it so that you're attracting the right students to you. Hopefully you're even repelling some students that you don't want to have because they're not a good fit for your brand, and that you're seeing the success that you want. So thank you, grazie. We lived in Italy for 3 years, so I'm obsessed with all things Italian. But I am here. We can switch back to my video and I can answer any questions that you guys have that you put in the chat. But yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with me. And I'm so excited to see what you do with your course brands.
Awesome. Thank you, Kay. So I'm going to start, reading you some questions from the chat. So Rosie Khan has a question. She says her Instagram account is the female doc, and it started out as a career advice for women in medicine. Her followers are 79% female, but now she's mostly selling courses to teach pre-med students how to get into medical school, not female specific. Should she adjust her Instagram account name, the female doc?
I would, yeah, that's a great question. So I think in a similar question that I get is like, okay, I'm this archetype. Like, are all of my students going to be that archetype too? I don't think that it's a problem that she's a female doctor. I would just be mindful that you're not making all of your marketing, all of your brand messaging to be targeted towards females on Instagram. So I don't think that she necessarily needs to change her name, but I would just be mindful of the position in the market that you're creating so that it's not alienating all of the men pre-med students that she wants to also attract.
Awesome. Thank you. So Romy has a question. Romy says, hi, what a great talk. What happens if you got 31% hero and 31% magician? Do I need to clarify the message, brand, or try to bring these two together?
Yeah, so I always recommend that you have two. And then I also tell everybody who takes the quiz, because sometimes you'll even get 25% in 4 different archetypes, is that you have veto power. So if you, for some reason, sometimes this happens where you just don't resonate with the quiz result. Sometimes, a lot of times that's just because you have like a mindset block around the name of the archetype. And if you dive into it, you actually do resonate a lot with what it stands for. But yeah, it sounds like you have a clear winner with the 2 archetypes, and then you can use your own discretion to figure out like which one you want to lead with and which one is kind of going to play the supporting role in both your visuals and your messaging of your brand.
Awesome. So we have a question from Ashley. Ashley is asking, if I already have my business set up, what are some quick wins to make moves towards slowly rebranding my business?
Yes. That is such a great question. So rebranding, it becomes this kind of tricky timing equation because it's like we might work on stuff in the background, but then eventually you need to draw a line in the sand and switch over to the new identity. I think that typically works best. So you're not going back maybe and adjusting everything because that would take like a year just to complete the entire rebrand. But as you move forward, everything that you create moving forward is under that new brand. But if you're not doing like a full identity change, I think just upgrading the experience. Remember that E squared, elevate the experience at every opportunity that you have. Use the 5 C's to make sure that your sales page already incorporates all of those things, and be on a constant mission to just upgrade your brand in little ways, whether that's copy or like maybe using better images, getting a new photo shoot, those types of things, if you're just making continual improvements to your brand.
Awesome. That was a great answer. Thank you. So John Papa is asking, what resources do you recommend for getting the word out and using a service to help target it efficiently?
Yes. So similar to how I view branding, like my whole philosophy on branding is to look in instead of out. I am the same way with marketing platforms. I think that it is the fastest ticket to Burnoutville to choose a marketing platform because it's like going to have massive results in a short amount of time. I have found in my own business and in my clients' business that marketing and getting the word out is a long-term journey. So you're going to get some results quickly, but it's going to be something that if you want to maximize and get all of the results that are possible, you have to stick with one thing for a long time. So to do that, choose the one that comes easiest to you, that you're the most fascinated with, and that you just kind of like it feels fun to show up on whatever platform that is, whether it's Instagram or Pinterest or YouTube or Facebook or wherever. So make it based on your internal compass instead of what XYZ guru tells you that you should be doing.
Awesome. So Kelly has a question. She's asking, I am definitely sage alchemist, but my clients are heroes and comforters. I want them to feel at home, but you're saying to just emanate my archetypes and not adapt to them.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because think about it like a relationship with a friend. I mean, to a certain extent, like our friends will accommodate us, right? But we love them for who they are. And like, we love them when they're being their best selves. And your brand is the same way. The more that you stand in who you are at your best, the more people are going to be attracted to you from all of the archetypes, because we all identify with all of the archetypes to some extent. It's just a matter of using it as a tool and as a filter to figure out what your strongest message is. So don't freak yourself out that like you're only going to attract a certain type of person. That just isn't the case at all. Use it as a tool to know yourself better so that you can express that to the market.
Awesome. So Charles has a question. Charles is saying, I'm struggling with pricing in relation to the content and expertise I offer. How much of your X Factor unique selling proposition and value should go into determining the price for each course?
I love talking about pricing. So the interesting thing that I have witnessed and experienced personally with selling courses and services, over the last however many years that I've been doing it, is that there are clients at every single price point. Honestly and truly, I have seen people who build websites for less than $100. I've worked at an agency where websites costed upwards of $100,000. And I know that there's people who charge millions of dollars just to create a website. So it's less of a question of what can I charge. It's more of a question of like matching what you want to charge with what your ideal client is expecting, and then being fully confident in the return on investment that you can provide for clients. Return on investment gets a little bit challenging if you're teaching like a hobby or those types of things, but I say all this mostly to say charge what you want and stand behind it with confidence, and I think you'll be able to sell it.
Awesome. That was great. So JF Bouchard has a question. Uh, they're asking, would you say that the archetype profile should be setting the tone to all of the brand's communications, including marketing, newsletter, etc.?
Yes, and that's kind of the beauty of them. Like you just get to decide once who you are as a brand, and then it applies to everything else. I've had other people ask a similar question, like, okay, I know that my personal brand is this. Like, are all of my products going to be that same archetype? And I tend to lean towards yes. Like, the less complicated that you can make things for both yourself and for your ideal clients, the better. So all of my courses have the same archetypes as I do as a personal brand. If I started a side project that had a completely different audience and I say I wasn't like a main face in it, then it might have a different archetype mix. But anytime you're talking to the same people, you're selling the same like customer journey, that same suite of products, you want to keep the same archetype mix so that you're creating that consistency over time.
Awesome, thank you. So I think we have one more. We have time for one more question. So Mary Ganderson is asking, I coach people who have a giant upset in life, divorce, death, loss of job, etc. Is there a way to use archetypes to help with grief? Is this like Enneagram? Myers-Briggs, I have trouble because my niche can be a downer, but I know people are suffering.
Yeah, you're doing really important work. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I don't work in that capacity, so I'm not a therapist, or I typically actually am not even a coach. I'm more of a consultant and strategist. So in terms of your actual practitioner work that you're doing with your clients, I'm not sure. But what I can say is that the more that you demonstrate to your clients, or the more that like you are a full operating, like vibrant human being, and I think that we all become more vibrant and more magnetic when we're at our best, and then we're leaning into who we are and not trying to be somebody else. I think that you leaning into that for yourself and your personal brand is going to have a ripple effect on your clients, and they're going to like be attracted to that by example, because you're just living life and doing it well.
Awesome, thank you. So that is it. We are at three, and that was an amazing workshop. Thank you, Kay. The chat was amazing. Everyone asked really great questions. You had really great answers. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for presenting. We will have a replay of this in your Teachable U. So if you ever want to look back, you want to get that checklist, hop on into Teachable U, and you will be able to find it. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for having me. This was so fun.